All right, we're just gonna go to the fucking Times of India because they have a written version of this, and I'm sick and tired of flapping around trying to find it. Trump's plan to slash education funding puts Bell County, Kentucky schools at a risk of a $600,000 loss. Bell County, Kentucky, home to scenic Appalachian vistas and a rich coal mining history, is facing a potential crisis that could severely impact its public schools. As the community continues to cope with economic decline, the prospect of education funding cuts from the federal government looms large, putting thousands of students and families at risk. For many residents of Bell County, the school district is more than just an educational institution. It is the lifeblood of the community, providing jobs, food, and after-school care for children in one of the county's poorest areas. However, with proposed cuts to federal funding under President Trump's education policies, Bell County could see a staggering $600,000 reduction in its budget. Bell County schools rely heavily on federal support. Approximately 10% of the district's budget comes from federal funds, though this figure has been temporarily higher due to COVID relief. According to CNN, if federal funds are slashed as proposed by Trump's administration, the result could be layoffs, increased class sizes, and fewer resources for students who need the most. Superintendent Tom Gambrell, a lifelong resident who worked his way up from custodian to district leader, emphasized the devastating consequence of such cuts. Quote, "If we lose funding, it's going to mean fewer teachers, larger classes, and less attention for our most vulnerable students." He said, "This could be especially harmful for children in Bell County, where a third of students live in poverty and nearly 20% have special needs." The idea of abolishing the Department of Education is so reckless because of instances like this. The Department of Education serves to hand out money and collect data. They don't teach critical race theory. They don't teach transgender ideology. They're not convincing children to become gay. The state is the institution that handles the curriculum. Whatever school you go to, in whatever fucking state, what your child learns is decided by the state, not the Department of Education. The Department of Education exists for instances like this, and I would argue that clearly whatever money they're getting is not enough, and I want them to get more. This goes back to the federal subsidies by red states. This is where the federal tax dollars from New York and California and Massachusetts go. It goes to funding schools like this. It goes to trying to improve the lives of the children who live here. Education is a way out of poverty. If you're getting a shit education, you can't get, or it's going to be harder for you to get into college, and you might get discouraged. And then you might just, wind up working a minimum wage job, 2 minimum wage jobs, trying to make ends meet. But if you go to a well-funded school and you get a good education, you can go to a good college and you can transform your life. Another way to make that even easier is to make community colleges and state colleges free. So that way these people, these children, don't at any point have to worry about financial aid. They can just go to a school, get a good education, become an engineer, become a teacher, whatever, and bring themselves out of poverty. They can break the cycle of poverty. The threat of funding cuts is not unique to Bell County. A CNN analysis found that 15 states that relied most heavily on federal support for their public schools in 2022 all voted for Donald Trump in the previous election. This includes states where rural districts like Bell County could be hit hardest by reduced federal dollars. As CNN reported, these states depend on federal funds to sustain their schools, and a reduction in support could exacerbate educational inequalities in an already underserved community. The loss of $600,000 in federal funding would be a blow to Bell County's already struggling schools, according to Gambrell, who, by the way, voted for Donald Trump. He was very open about that. I did manage to watch the CNN video, but it was on a YouTube video, so I guess I didn't catch the paywall. But also the principal of this in particular, of the school that they covered in Bell County, also voted for Donald Trump. According to him, this funding is not just vital for education, it helps keep the district running. Many of the families depend on the schools for basic needs like meals, clothing, access to critical resources. Gambrill explained that some students may not eat again until Monday if they don't receive meals at school, highlighting the integral role schools play in keeping families afloat. Yeah, these are important bodies, which is why school choice, for example, is so insidious, because you're taking funding away from schools that need it and allocating it to schools that don't. This is a PSA not just for keeping the Department of Education, but expanding investment into these school districts. It's not a surprise that a lot of blue states tend to have higher education outcomes, because yeah, you may pay more in property tax, but at least on my property tax bill, 50% goes to the school district. 50% goes to the school district. The house I grew up in, it was mostly the same thing, except the property taxes were higher. This is why I was able to go to a quality high school. This is why so many of the schools on Long Island and in downstate New York are high quality. But every student should have that privilege. Like, I shouldn't be lucky. This should be the bare minimum. Every student, every child is entitled to a quality education. And beyond that, being able to eat 2 meals a day at school is important, because if you're not receiving adequate nutrition, you're going to perform worse in the classroom. Poverty hurts in more ways than one. It's more than just anxiety and the mental stress of having to make ends meet. Like, children who are born in a low income bracket suffer as well. They have worse health markers. They perform worse in school. There's also all of the additional benefits that come from public school. The sense of community, the extracurriculars, sports. Well, that applies more so to middle and high school. But still, these districts need more money. The Department of Defense gets a larger budget every year, while we're fucking considering slashing the funding for one of the poorest school districts in Kentucky. As reported by CNN, the broader picture is one of a community already under strain, with coal production dwindling and opioid addiction rampant. The district faces a shrinking tax base and rising costs. Cuts to federal education funding, which have been a consistent feature of Republican proposals, threaten to push Bell County schools over the edge. Bell County's fate could be a warning for other rural school districts across the nation. If Trump's proposed cuts move forward for the community, the stakes couldn't be higher. What pisses me off, and I try not to get mad at people who voted for Donald Trump, because I see why people felt how they felt about him this way around. I understand the despair that a lot of Americans have felt over the last couple of years, while our society increasingly becomes more fixated on the profit motive, thereby driving up the cost of housing, of groceries. People will always seek change, and the unfortunate reality is that right-wingers present change in a charismatic, bombastic way that the Democratic Party outside of Bernie Sanders could never muster. But what I don't understand is when you hear him say something like, I want to abolish the Department of Education. He said it clear as day. Why do you, as an educator, go and vote for that? There's this idea in American politics that the electorate feels nothing ever happens when the president is in power, largely because it's true, in the sense that over the last 50 years, your life really has not been changed too drastically over the 8 presidents that we've had, or however fucking many. So there is a there is apathy towards our political system. And I do understand that. I do. But I can't comprehend how Trump is able to say things and then people vote for him, and then when he does it, they're like, "Oh, we didn't expect this." Why would you not expect it? I can't. I don't. I'm incapable of understanding that. I hope that at some point in the future, hopefully Donald Trump is not president, and that we are able to give back to these communities that have been ruined by the system. These people have had their lives destroyed by capitalism. Straight up. It's also like when I see communities like this in Appalachia who were once entirely reliant on coal mining, think about the dramatic effect that one sustainable energy plant would have on these kinds of communities. It would drastically improve the quality of life. It would revitalize in it would revitalize the part of the United States that has been fucked the hardest by the 1%. There would be tangible impacts on these people's lives. There would be less overdoses. There would be less drug addiction because people wouldn't have to cope with the fact that there's nothing in their town anymore. It would be safer. People would have money in their pockets. They would have a very good job, right? And if it's a government ran sustainable energy plant, probably a union job where you could earn $35, $40 an hour. And not only that, they would be able to reinvest that money into their own community. And as a result, you do this across all of the places across this country that have been ravaged. The outlook of the United States looks considerably better, and we don't have to worry about children not knowing where their next meal is going to come from. There was this Republican fuckface, this Republican dipshit, I think out of Florida, with, I don't know if he got chin implants or Botox, but he looked like he had some work done. And this is not entirely pertinent to this article, but when mentioned of the freeze allowing children to go hungry, he was basically like, I don't give a fuck about them because I had to work when I was 13. And it's like, are you misunderstanding the entire equation? You shouldn't have had to work when you were 13. Right? Like, we need better, we need a better system for everybody, obviously, but children in particular, because this is not something that they're asked to be born into, right? I'm sure if we were able to talk to a 9-month-old fetus and say, hey, would you rather be born in Norway or in the United States of America? I think they would all take Norway. I'm really getting into the weeds here.